Please come to order. Welcome. Our speaker has arrived. So anyway, for our people on Zoom, you could tell that our speaker has arrived. So what we'll do, with no further ado, we'll introduce Colonel McAuley. He is one of those gentlemen that have the courage to run for office. The reason I say that is because no matter the circumstances, that's not an easy thing to do. That takes a commitment that is above and beyond the call of duty, particularly in these days. And he's running in a district, and he'll explain the details, but I believe his district is a heavily red district. So he has an issue there, and he's going to have to work hard to win. But from his resume, he deserves to win. And I can tell you one of the main reasons he deserves to win. He's a member of our group. So let's give him a big hand for that. And I'll tell you a little bit about him. He joined the Air National Guard at age 24 as a third-year medical student. He has served 6 tours of duty, including 2 in Iraq. He set up mobile hospitals during the pandemic and deployed to nursing homes where other medical staff refused to go. As Florida's air surgeon, he has helped to coordinate our state's response when hurricanes and natural disasters strike. Wherever someone needs help, that's where he goes. As a pain management physician at the Veterans Administration, and that's important for us too because we have many of our members who go to VA, he saw the damage caused to the organization by rampant cuts and decided that he would again serve his country by running for Florida's 15th Congressional District in Tampa Bay, along the I-4 corridor into Lakeland. He currently teaches medicine and lives with his wife Tammy and 3 children. So let's give Darren a special welcome for taking the effort to get through that traffic and get down here. Darren, the floor is yours. Thanks for coming down.
But thank you all for putting up with me being a bit delayed. And for welcoming me to speak to the group. My name is COL Dr. Darren McAuley. So you just heard a little bit through that phenomenal introduction, but I'll give you a more in-depth one. I did join the military when I was 24 years old. I looked at the lineage of the military in my family, the example of my grandfather who was in World War II and who was active duty Army, then went on after his active duty tour, after his 6 years, to do another 26 years in the Army National Guard. And I also looked at the example of my uncles. So my uncle on my father's side and my uncle on my mother's side, who were in the Air Force and the Army respectively. And I recognized that military service is one of the few things that was available to youth that could afford somebody who was dedicated the opportunity to be at the right place at the right time to do the right thing for their country. And I wanted to carry that banner that my family had lifted, and I wanted to do the right thing for America. So at 24 years old, while I was still a third-year medical student, for the first time, I raised my hand and took the oath. Now, over the last 26 years, I've had multiple opportunities to actually stand up and lean forward for America. I've been deployed 6 times, Iraq twice, Turkey, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Africa, you name it. Went wherever the call was for a flight surgeon. Over 400 hours in various aircraft, 300 of which are combat flight hours, not only supporting air crews, but getting wounded and injured patients out of harm's way. But I didn't just join the military, I joined very specifically the National Guard, so the Air National Guard. The reason being, as many of us have seen in the news lately, it's the National Guard that is tasked with helping folks here in the homeland. That's the reserve component that actually operates within the United States of America. So I've had the opportunity to deploy here at home too. During COVID, I was a task force surgeon. I set up testing facilities so that we could track the pandemic. And then of course, when there were staffing shortages, I went in, you have to put your money where your mouth is, and take care of patients when we couldn't get other docs to go in and take care of folks at the beginning of COVID. When both hurricanes came to Tampa Bay last year, as Florida's state air surgeon, the highest ranking physician in the Florida Air National Guard, I coordinated our medical response. made sure that medical personnel, medical equipment, even MREs got where they needed to go so that our patients were taken care of, made sure that there was coordination and partnership between our civilian partners like Tampa General and the National Guard so that we could help to evacuate hospitals should it come to it. Have thoroughly enjoyed my 26 years in the military. I feel always a little weird, like maybe many of you do, when someone says thank you for your service, because it's been the best job I've ever had. And being honest, I've gotten more out of being in the military than the military's gotten out of me, even though at times I've given quite a bit. It was my civilian job and my civilian role as a pain management physician. I'm board certified in osteopathic manual medicine, sports medicine, pain medicine, and addiction medicine, that I noticed that first round of Doge cuts and the chaos that it brought to the VA. So I started to work at the VA for personal reasons, wanting to get home at 4:30 so I could take care of my first daughter, but also for professional reasons, because working at the VA is one of the only places that exists where you can give top-notch health care to people and not really care about what their insurance is or how they're going to pay for it. If they walk in the door, you can throw the book at them, you can give them everything. And as a physician, especially one who practices in modern times, that is really prized. I loved working at the VA. I built a VA family just like you kind of build a military family. And seeing the disrespect of VA employees, seeing the demoralizing effect that it had on VA employees, and what that did to our patient care is in large part what pushed me to run for office. I don't know if you guys can remember this because there's so many things that have happened over the last 13 months, but during that first round of cuts, they were sending out emails to a thoracic surgeon, to an ICU nurse, to an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a patient advocate that said, tell me 5 things that you did that were useful last week. Send me a list of things that you did that make it clear that you continue to deserve your job. That kind of disrespect is not how you grow an organization. It's how you hemorrhage talent. And that's exactly what we saw happen at the VA. We saw tons of folks leave, retire early, decide that they were going to go work in the civilian sector. And that had a direct impact on my patients. So where I saw patients as a pain management physician, I do ultrasound guided injections. That's kind of my bread and butter technique, my bread and butter procedure. The new patient internal medicine visit, your regular primary care, went from 4 weeks to 10 weeks. At the Tampa VA, where I worked for the Caregiver Support Program, a new patient mental health visit is now 140 days. The leading cause of death for a veteran underneath the age of 40 is suicide. It's untenable that we would make somebody wait 140 days when they finally get the courage to reach out for help. So I realized that these changes and these cuts and this force really for privatization, that's why you poke holes in an organization to tear it down, wasn't just happening at my VA, but it was happening at VAs throughout the state, throughout the country. And then if you take one more step back, it's not just happening at the VA. It was happening all throughout our federal government, the CDC, FEMA, Social Security, Medicare. All these organizations that were put together to provide services for us as Floridians and as Americans were being dismantled before our very eyes. And I realized at that moment, I remembered why I joined the military, why I joined the Air National Guard as a young man 26 years ago, to be in the right place at the right time to do the right thing for my neighbors and for my community and for my country. And once I saw that path, I recognized that I had to find a way to display the same kind of leadership that I have in the Guard as a civilian for our community right here. So I decided then, after a nice long talk with my wife, that I was going to run for Congress to try to display that leadership here in Tampa Bay. Now, I will push back a little bit. Our district is not solidly Republican. That is the first myth, the first, I dare say, lie that is told, and we kind of soak it in and believe it. It is an R+5 district. So only 5% more Republicans voted in my district than the national average. If you think about 5 cents on the dollar, $5 out of 100, that is not an insurmountable obstacle at all. A third of our registered voters are independent, a third are Republican, and a third are Democrat. So this is a district that's a true swing district. There's not folks there that are only voting along party lines or along ideology. They're going to vote for a candidate that they think will do the best for them. The district has a tremendous amount of diversity, not just racial diversity, not just 50% white collar, 50% blue collar, not just geographic, where we have areas like Zephyr Hills that are rural, we have cities, we have suburb and exurbs, but we have folks from all walks of life who are involved in almost every profession: doctors, nurses, farmers, and of course the service industry here in Florida. They agree on a few things that are the basis of my campaign. I speak to folks throughout the district, throughout the state, and they all say their number one complaint is that they can no longer afford to live in Tampa Bay. They can't afford to live in Central Florida. We have a housing affordability crisis in the United States of America, and Central Florida is the epicenter of it. We pay the highest utility bills in the nation. We have the highest homeowners insurance in the nation. We have the highest increase in home equity in between Florida and Tampa, basically the bookends of my district. All of those factors combined have raised mortgages, have raised rents, to the point where people are spending half or more of their income just to keep the rain off of them. That's their number one complaint. They want somebody to go to Congress and fight to reduce housing inaffordability. Number two, folks say they want health care. We're in the richest country in the world, but we still have people that go bankrupt because they got sick or they got injured. I never thought as a doctor that I would see a time when having affordable access to health care would be a partisan issue. But we've seen folks in power do everything they can to poke holes in our healthcare system, to find extra money to fund tax giveaways for the richest folks, not just in this country, the richest people in world history. We're taking away Medicaid from the poor and from pregnant women, taking away Medicare from our seniors, refusing to push forward ACA subsidies for folks who are in between jobs. All of that destabilization means that employer-based health care is even more expensive for those of us who are fortunate enough to have a job. Number two on my platform is making sure that we have affordable health care and it's accessible for as many people as I can in Tampa Bay and Florida and in the United States of America. And number three, going back to what pushed me into this race in the first place, as a former VA employee, I want to see a stable federal government that provides services for us. Social Security, the VA, Medicare, Medicaid, FEMA, these are all systems that we pay into through our tax dollars. They should not be used as a vehicle, once again, for billionaires to get tax giveaways. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos needs money more than folks in Florida need FEMA. A third of the national flood insurance claims come out of this state. Any representative who would vote to gut FEMA is turning their backs directly on us. It's a disaster tax where our state government has been complicit in the federal government passing all of those costs on to us to prepare for a storm, to deal with the aftermath, to mitigate the damage to your home, the unexpected healthcare costs. Any cut to FEMA is unacceptable. In our district, we have a tapestry of folks who want those three things. They want to live affordably, they want health care, and they want services from their government. We have 50,000 veterans in the district who are upset and fighting mad that they're seeing the VA be cut. They're seeing these wait times extend. They're seeing the privatization of disability exams, where you go to get a disability exam at the VA, and the person that you're seeing to get that exam is being incentivized to tell you no. We're seeing the caregiver support program, which was put together by John McCain, one of my personal heroes, being slashed because they can't afford to get all the folks in that they need to actually work in the program. That makes it take longer and longer for people to get accepted into the caregiver support program as well. We've got 120,000 Medicaid recipients in our district. Once again, folks who are fighting mad that they're having their health care slashed and gutted. And other people don't really understand how the healthcare system all works together. So even if you don't have Medicaid, a Medicaid cut means that if you have a child who has disabilities, they're more likely to not be able to get health care at school. It means that if you plan on going to a hospital because you had a car accident like the unfortunate gentleman I saw earlier today, or you had some kind of comorbidity like a heart attack, the hospitals are overwhelmed because other hospitals have closed down because they get 25% of their income from Medicaid. Medicare is not an entitlement. It's a deal that we pay into with taxes, and we expect the government to uphold their end of the bargain when we need it. If there is a continually aging population and you stop the expansion of Medicare, we have to call that what it is, a Medicare cut. To me, these things are unacceptable, and I want to go to DC to once again display the same type of leadership I did in uniform, but now as a civilian, fighting for folks in Tampa Bay, fighting for my neighbors, fighting for Floridians, and fighting for the American people. Thank you guys for taking the time to listen to my platform. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Please tell us about your incumbent. Are we on here?
So Laurel Lee is a lobbyist turned political appointee, basically been a political insider her entire career, fast-tracked into office, was able to ride a red wave into Congress, and since being there has voted in line with the MAGA agenda the entire time. I've heard it said by other folks that she is more formidable than, let's say, Lauren Boebert or Anna Paulina Luna, people who act in a fashion where it's easy to disregard their professionalism because she's a lawyer, because she's a former judge, and because she purports herself in that manner. But if you look at her voting record, it's exactly the same as those other folks that I just mentioned. Mrs. Lee has turned her backs on the folks in Tampa Bay multiple times. She voted to defund FEMA when both of those hurricanes were coming towards Tampa. And this was before DOGE. This was before we were supposedly looking for fraud, waste, and abuse. There were 2 hurricanes coming to Tampa Bay that were directly going to impact us, and did. And the one person that CD15 sent to DC that was supposed to advocate for us was voting to gut FEMA so that she could poke her finger in the outgoing president's eye. Playing political games instead of looking out for the people who sent her to DC to look out for us. I also think about Laurel Lee, and I know the fact that she has received more from Florida Power and Light, a 6-figure sum, than any congressperson in the state of Florida. So you have to ask yourself, why is a utility company paying 6-figure sums to a congressperson? And then the answer becomes clear when that same utility company turns around and has the highest rate increase in American history and raises our utility bills to the highest in America for a period. Texas has now beat us out. My utility rates have gone up. They've doubled in the last 3 years. We've seen that throughout Tampa Bay. So they bought her silence. They bought her complicity. Her negating her responsibility to stand up and say, you can't do that to my constituents. They deserve better. And if you really take a step back and you think about it, it's a scheme where they take money from us every month, hundreds of dollars of money from us every month. They charge us for utilities like they always have. They dole it out to their CEOs and their shareholders, and then they put the rest in her purse. That's not representing us. That's representing herself. Laurel Lee needs to go. It's been 4 years too long. Just because you're a part of a political party doesn't mean that you shouldn't stand up to your own party when you have to. It doesn't mean that when the hurricane is coming to your backyard, you shouldn't have the courage to stand up and say, I don't want to cut FEMA right now. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have the moral backbone to say, I'm not going to take money from a company that is stabbing my constituents in the back. It's way past time. 4 years too many. We need a change.
Are there, and how many are there, debates with this Laurel Lee?
Well, right now, I mean, we have a late primary system in Florida, so we won't have any debates until at least after August 18th. There are 3 other folks who filed the paperwork to run for this seat, but I am the only one who's built a grassroots coalition on the ground. I'm the only one who's able to fundraise. We're at $399,000 as of this morning. My 3 opponents are at -$2,000, -$4,000, and 0. Not going to be able to flip an R+5 seat with $0 or -$4,000. So I am waiting for August to have the primary over and continue to put the heat on Mrs. Lee. I look forward to being able to stand on stage with her and put my ideas against hers any day. I think I'll win that Pepsi challenge.
All of the world's first countries have a national health scheme except the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be in favor of scrapping all these things that we have, like Medicare, Medicaid, VA, and put it all under one plan and let everybody have health care that they can access?
We need to get health care to as many people as we can. The problem with a nationalized health service is that there are folks who still want to have their own choice of private health care. As long as folks have a choice where they can get their own private health care, I'm okay with the government taking over the provision of health care and cutting insurance companies out of the middle. They have both.
Yes.
So, all insurance companies are supposed to do is hold on to the funds and dole them out. They're not supposed to decide who gets care when. There is nothing more frustrating as a physician than having a patient come into your office and know that you'd like to give them this medication, but you can't until you give them a cheaper medication for 6 weeks to see if it works. You would like to send them to surgery, but you can't because you have to send them to physical therapy for 8 weeks first. Some of those decisions are based on sound medical knowledge, but more often they're not. They're based on just what an insurance company will pay for. By cutting the insurance companies out, we will definitely provide better health care to folks. But I'm also in favor of making sure that people who want to have their own private insurance have that option.
Having been in politics a few years, I'm going to ask you the important question. Where can we donate to your campaign?
I was going to get to that at the end, but thank you for preempting me. DarrenForFlorida.com. DarrenFor Florida.com. We do need your support. We need your support in terms of donations. But even if you can't donate, I need folks who are willing to volunteer, folks who are willing to phone bank, people who don't live in the district and are outside of the district, know folks in CD15, know people who want to make a change in their government. I express to folks all the time that politics is a team sport. And, trading seats with other Democrats is really great for one representative at a time. But if we want to restore balance to our government, where we have a legislative branch that comes up with the laws, an executive branch that follows them through, and a judicial branch that mediates differences in opinion between those two, we need to start by flipping the House so that we have a Congress that actually acts on its own and doesn't just roll over whenever the executive tells them to.
You sound pretty progressive to me. What is your stance on people within the Democratic Party that say you can't get too progressive? And I'm thinking the last time we had a really progressive administration, it got reelected 4 times, so the Republicans had to put in term limits because he was so popular.
That's the first time I can say anyone has ever called me progressive. Definitely, by all definitions that I know of, a moderate. In my district in particular, so I don't castigate folks with progressive ideas. I think the heart of progressivism is taking care of the people, and I want to take care of as many people as I can. But communication is about what you say, but it's also about what other people hear. And oftentimes, when you say you want health care for all, or when you say that you want to make sure that you're increasing the minimum wage in too quick a fashion, all other people hear is they want to give handouts, they're communists, they're socialists, right? And that's messaging. It's up to us to make it clear to people that, because like I said, 1/3 of my district are independents and 1/3 are Republicans. I can't win the seat without bringing independents into the fold. I can't win the seat without reaching out to disaffected Republicans who are thinking, this isn't what I voted for. And in order to build a coalition of all of those ideologic and political flavors, you have to be careful about how you speak, to make sure that you're not alienating folks and basically scaring them out of the big tent. That being said, the role of government is to take care of the people. If you look at any policies that we currently have that people are in favor of, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, those are Democratic policies. Democrats did that for the American people. We've allowed our brand to move backwards where folks don't think that we're actually looking out for them. But reminding them of what we've done in the past and what we want to do in the future is the way to get Democrats in office.
Just looking at the geography of the 15th, it's all of Polk County and parts of Lake County. And I always suspected that Polk County was a conservative county with Brady Judge and those kind of folks. So how are you going to bring a Democratic vote up in Lake County?
So we're not in Lake County. CD15 is currently the western half of 98, so we split Lakeland in half, and then we go all the way east past Plant City, as far north as Zephyr Hills, and then as far east as Wesley Chapel, Lutz, and Temple Terrace, New Tampa. So it does include some of Polk County. I was actually in Polk County today. That's where I was driving from when I said I was coming down here. I was in Lakeland earlier today. The way that I plan on making the tent bigger, bringing in Republicans and independents, is by speaking to the things that they say they want. Folks say they want the three things that I mentioned. They want a stable federal government. They want affordable access to health care. And they want to see a decrease in their mortgages and in their rent. Those are the issues that I'm running on. I don't run on anything else. I don't purport to be anything or anybody else. I want to bring those things to the people of Tampa Bay. That's what unites folks. That's what they all say they want and need. Now, I've worked at the VA for 10 years as a doctor. Of course, I want to strengthen the VA. I want to bring funding to the VA. That is usually not a partisan issue. I also have national security experience through all of my deployments. I believe wholeheartedly and fervently that the reason that America is one of the most prosperous and richest countries in the world is because our economic might is inextricably linked to our military might. So I want to do everything I can to support the United States and support her military. I view a closed border where we can have orderly immigration as a national security issue. We have to know who's coming into the country, why, and how long they plan on being here. But at the same time, we're talking about that military might and that economic might. One thing that immigration does is it fuels your workforce so that folks can actually contribute to the economy. I think that we agree on more things than we disagree, but sticking to those issues, housing, healthcare, a stable federal government that provides services, those are things that Republicans, Democrats, and independents all agree on.
On Social Security, there's three basic plans out there to reform it. Raising the age retirement, raising the earnings cap a certain level, or busting the cap totally and just let the wealthy keep paying Social Security as we do. What's your position on it, or do you have a different proposal on Social Security to make it strong and viable for the long term?
I think that we need to raise the cap on who pays into Social Security. There's no reason that you and I are paying the same amount into Social Security that Elon Musk is. All right? It's ridiculous. But I will say, and I'll push back a little bit, Social Security is solvent. It's fine. You know, these are rumors. I actually did a rally with Martin O'Malley, the former governor of Maryland and former Social Security administrator, a couple months back. And he can do a much better job about it than I can. But he has a whole 45-minute presentation on the surplus that Social Security has. Poking holes in Social Security, firing all their staff, making it so that they're ineffective and that they can't actually function is more a matter of trying to derail the organization so that once again those billionaires can get their hands on that surplus. Social Security is strong. It's not going to fall anytime soon. We can raise the cap if we want to provide more benefits to more people. And I think that if you think about cost of living and inflation, that is definitely valid. But we don't need to make any drastic changes right away because Social Security is going to collapse.
We have a question from one of our members online, Ed, he says, the amount of corruption in the federal government and the example you just gave is astronomical, especially the president and family and cohorts. What is your opinion of making this the first plank in your platform? It crosses all boundaries.
Being anti-corruption is something that unfortunately should need to be said, but it does need to be said the way things are now. Corruption is bad, not just because it's antithetical to the morals and values that Americans hold. It is a betrayal of the standards for which we elect our elected officials. But it also plays a direct role in making sure that representatives are not representing the people. I'll give you two examples of that. So number one would be climate change. If you look at clean energy, the desire for clean energy, more than 65%, almost 3/4, okay, almost, but 65%, 2/3 of Floridians want to see green energy. They want to see solar panels. They want to see windmills. We understand better than most that the climate is changing, that our planet is being made warmer, and that we're seeing these catastrophic 100-year storms every couple years now. So we want to see that change, but for some reason, we can't get any of our elected representatives to agree on the fact that it's happening right now, even though it's happening right in front of all of our faces. And you ask yourself, well, if I know that when I go to the beach now, it's a whole lot warmer than when I went into it 10 years ago. If I see worsening storms coming to Florida, worsening flooding coming when storms do happen, how come my elected representatives don't see it? And they do. There's no debate about whether or not climate change is real. There's no debate about whether or not human activity actually change the planet and make it worse for all of us, but they're being paid not to. The folks who own all of the fossil fuel industry put out millions of dollars to line the pockets of various politicians. They put out millions of dollars to get their opinions on TV and on the news, on podcasts. They spend a tremendous amount of time and energy making sure that anybody who talks about climate change is looked upon as if they're wearing a tinfoil hat, when we all kind of know that climate change is actually happening. So the corruption isn't just about the moral rot that is taking place where we see our elected representatives not living up to the oaths that they took. It's having a direct impact on us, on our children, on the future of our planet. And that is why corruption is a bad thing. I'm in no way, shape, or form not anti-corruption. But the reason I don't run on being anti-corruption is because folks disagree about what exactly is corrupt. The other example that I'll give, and I'll be careful here in a room full of veterans, okay, but is gun control. They call them common sense gun laws for a reason, because they're common sense. I've got 9 guns. I used to say I have more guns than I have friends, but I started to get a lot of friends when I ran for office, okay? But I also have 3 safes. I have 6-year-old twins and I have a 10-year-old. I can't leave loaded firearms around my house, knowing that I have little kids around. My son gets into everything he can. If you have been banned from getting on an airplane because you're on a terrorist watch list, how can you be on a no-fly list, but we can't put you on a no-buy list? You're too dangerous to sit next to me in 24C on a plane going to Miami, but you're not too dangerous to go into a gun store, buy a rifle, and 300 rounds of ammunition? These are common sense gun laws. They call them common sense gun laws because they're common sense. If you're a domestic abuser and you beat your wife, how can you buy a gun and shoot her? It doesn't make any sense. But if you look at why there's so much consternation to passing those types of laws, it's once again, follow the money. Follow the NRA. Follow the gun manufacturers. See whose campaigns they're contributing to. See who they are propping up in terms of podcasts and news media. Whose sound bites they're putting into the air. And then all of a sudden you see that corruption once again affecting not just the morals of our elected representatives, but the everyday lives of our families, our children. Gun violence is a true problem in the United States. As a physician, I know that, but we all know that as citizens. But it's something that people agree on. Sensible gun owners don't want criminals to be able to buy guns. Sensible gun owners think you should have to get a background check. They think you should have to have a safe. They believe in no fly, no buy. So if it's common sense, how come we can't get our elected representatives to do it? It's not because they don't have common sense, but it's because they have dollars and cents coming from those organizations.
This is more of a comment now because you have now touched on climate change. But I think we will not, if we don't start significantly addressing climate change, we won't be able to fund FEMA enough or fund enough power plants to generate electricity for the air conditioning we'll need and the heating we'll need in the winter and all the other storms and the naval bases that go underwater. We're just going to go bankrupt if we don't start to really address climate change in a significant way.
100%. I'll take that thought process just a little teeny bit further, okay? And part of the reason, I told you that my utility bills have doubled in the last 3 years, and I'm sure that many of you have had something similar happen to you. Part of the reason our utility bills have doubled is not because we're just using more energy. It's not just because we're stressing the grid more. It's not because it's hot here in Florida and we like to have our AC on in the summer, okay? It's because of these meta centers that are being set up for autonomous computations for AI, okay? So think about that. We are having AI take folks' jobs and remodel the entire job market where all of a sudden people can't get employed to do the jobs they used to do because we have computer algorithms that will do some of it. And then at the same time, while these large companies and employers are able to save money by not hiring us so that we can't support our families, we have to foot the bill for that by paying for utility costs so that they can put together these huge computation centers that are burning up all this energy and that are stressing our energy grid. Nobody voted for that. Nobody voted to have simultaneously their bills raised and their neighbor's job taken at the same time. And you'll notice that it's not really talked about. You don't hear or see it on the news. Nobody's talking about it on a podcast. You very rarely see anything about it on social media. But I am sure that if the constituents knew what was happening and they knew that they were taken out of one pocket to give with the other hand, they would want to regulate it more frequently and more arduously.
I want to follow up on that with another comment on solar, wind, and battery. They are now the cheapest form of energy, and the market conditions are such that they're going to keep getting cheaper. Mm-hmm. And yet Donald Trump is cutting back on investments in it and putting us further behind on one of the most important technologies we have at this point. It's absolutely insane.
They can make an electric car that drives further and faster, cheaper in China than they can here. That's a shame and a travesty. We're the innovators, the leaders of world innovation when it comes to technology. What China is known for is taking our technology after we put in all the hard work and then trying to improve on it and make it cheaper and smaller. But we've taken our foot, no pun intended, completely off the gas with electric cars, so they've been able to just surpass us for the next new wave.
I have solar panels on my house, and yet when there's a power failure, the sun is still out after the storm passes by, and they will not, unless you have batteries, operate on the grid, off the grid, I should, because the grid's off at that time. Is there anything that can be, that's of course a code or something like that, regulation, that I don't really know which code would cover not getting electricity when the sun is out?
Honestly, I've never heard of that. So, just shooting from the hip, and I'm a bit paranoid at times, it sounds to me like someone's trying to force you to buy batteries. You can't just get it directly from the sun itself. I don't know enough about that to comment. Residential solar.
Yeah, especially with batteries.
Laura Lee's buddies.
out at sea, and I keep seeing a lot of our carriers and flat tops and that kind of thing that are put to rest, out in the Gulf or out in the ocean somewhere, something like that. Now here comes a crazy one, and it has to do with the environment. But why not take them, fill them up with ice makers? And I know that the type of chemical that they use for making ice, like in a refrigerator and just about anything, it really elevates the air pollution and that kind of thing. But why can't they? There's other chemicals that are being used now besides that could be used to power these.
Why can't we use other technologies to try to decrease the heat in the sea? I think that's where you're going. So I agree. And I don't, sorry. In all honesty, I don't know enough about the technology of Freon or even the temperature of the ocean itself. I'm a pain management doctor. I don't claim to know everything. But I do know that America is the leader of innovation in the world. When we put our money where our mouth is, when we focus on STEM education, when we go back to our roots of trying to put together a force, a conglomerate of people who are going to solve a problem. We had the Manhattan Project, right? We were the ones who did it. America leaned forward. America recognized that there was an existential threat, and we got the biggest brains in the world to sit together in a room and hammer it out until it was done. We can do that for anything. That, to me, is American exceptionalism. But we have to put the money into it. We have to put the energy into it. And the reason why we're not putting the money and the energy into it goes back to that question we had before about corruption. That means that you actually have to admit that it's a problem. You have to admit that the oceans are warmer. You have to admit that climate change is happening. And until we get to a place where we stop all the rhetoric that puts us in a position and paints us in a box where we can't move forward, we're not going to lean forward with that kind of innovation. But I am a full-on proponent that American exceptionalism means that when we put our minds to it, we can do anything. But we have to stop arguing with each other long enough to put our minds to it.
And this is kind of following up on the whole energy thing. The current administration, I put solar and battery on my house, and I got, a tax incentive to do that. I bought an EV, and I got a tax incentive to do that. And one of the things, if you're elected to Congress, that you can do is try and make sure that we reestablish those incentives for the solar and EVs and perhaps new technologies that are going to come down the pike if we don't quit killing our research in this country.
1,000%. Always been a capitalist. Capitalist systems are based on competition. One thing that you do from a federal government perspective is you don't push industries down, but you can always incentivize other industries being pulled up. And I think the lack of incentive for folks to buy into, because it does take some investment, right? To buy into clean energies is, once again, it goes back to that, who's telling us that we shouldn't be doing this, and whose pockets are they lining to make sure that their voice is the loudest. Thank you guys for taking the time to listen to me. I encourage you all, please go to darrenforflorida.com, DARRENFOR, Florida.com. We need donations. We need folks who are willing to volunteer. Tell folks, your neighbors who live in the area, that you know a serviceman, a doctor, a father, a husband who wants to go to D.C. and be the vehicle for the American people to take their democracy back. Thank you.
Thank the Colonel very much. Very informative and much more informed than some candidates that we've had speak to us in the past. We thank you for attending tonight and thank the people online. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.